April 17th in room 137 of the Edison Building. Present at the board table is Mr. Michael Munoz, Superintendent of Schools, and a non-voting ex officio member of the board. Also present is Ms. Wendy Edgar, the Assistant Board Clerk. Ms. Edgar, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Barlow.
Here.
Mrs. Becker.
Here.
Chair Marvin.
Here.
Mr. Schlusner.
Here.
Ms. Seelinger.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Workman.
Here.
I also didn't hit the gavel, so there. Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Munoz.
Yes, at this time we have the pleasure to have the pledge led by the Gibbs Elementary Student Council members.
Two 2.01, approval of the agenda. Are there any items that need to be changed?
No changes.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. 3.01, recognitions. Mr. Munoz.
Yes, at this time I'm going to have Mark Queasley, Century's Activities Director, to introduce our first recognition.
Good evening, everyone. Ms. Marvin, Mr. Munoz, and members of the board. At this time, I think we've heard from the Century Chess Group, but is there anything else we missed, Chuck, about the recognition of the students?
No, actually, the Mayo Chess Club is here. I apologize, Century players. As many high-achieving students are involved with 5 activities, but they took 5th place at the state.
Okay, but no students have not been recognized. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Mark, do you want to recognize the other kids on camera, please?
Yeah. Yes. So the students that are involved in our chess club that are here this evening, why don't we have you please come forward one more time and be recognized in front of the cameras and in front of the board.
Coaches too.
Awesome. And I'm just going to have them go through and introduce them by name so you have a name to a face here.
I'm Henry Lag. I go to Mayo High School.
I'm Zonnie Chang. I go to Mayo.
I'm Justin Ricker, and I play for Lourdes.
I'm Long Dao, and I go to Mayo.
And if their parents are here this evening, we would like to have them stand as well to be recognized for all their support. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Next up, we have some Century, Mayo, and Friedel students for band, and I believe Ms. Kaus and Troy Kawazinski. Okay. Excuse me, Kowalski.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Kaus. I'm band director at Century High School, and as Mr. Queasley said, Troy Kowalski, band director for Friedel Middle School, and Aaron Cole, Mayo High School.
We had students this winter that auditioned for the Minnesota Band Directors Association 6 through 8 and 9-10 honor band, which are state level honor bands open to students in those respective grades. It's a auditioned recording by we record and submit, and the festival this year will be taking place this weekend at Casson Manorville, nice and close. We had several students selected. I will introduce the Century students that are here this evening, and they can stand up or they can even come up front. We have Charlie Burkett, who is a 10th grader, plays trombone. Emma Erickson, bassoon, 10th grade as well, and Ethan Erickson, French horn, 10th grade. Fourth student from Century, Alexandra Bonkos, is a 9th grade flute player who is unable to be here this evening.
If you guys want to stay up, we'll break the others up here. Like Amanda said, my name is Aaron Cole from Mayo High School, and from Mayo High School Band we have Dominic Sinicrope, 9th grade trumpet player, and Megan Steyer, a 10th grade trombonist. Yeah. Congratulations.
And I'm Troy Kowalski. I teach at Friedel Middle School. From Friedel, we have Micah Suzuki. She plays tenor saxophone, and she is in the 6/8 band this year. So if any of you would be able to attend, the concert this weekend is happening at 2 p.m. at Casson Manorville High School, and it would be wonderful, since we are so close to Casson Manorville High School, if we could have representation from Rochester Public Schools.
Is that Saturday or Sunday?
This Sunday.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. And parents, if you please stand as well, we'd like to recognize you for your support.
Mark? French teacher?
Oh, certainly. And last but not least, Mr. Fogarty could not be here this evening, but Cindy Tiedemann was recognized as the American Association of Teachers for French for the 2017-18 school year as Teacher of the Year. Cindy dedicates so much time, energy, and resources to our students across the district, and we're so proud of this accomplishment for Cindy. Cindy, would you please come forward?
Mr. Munoz, members of the board, and the public, thank you so much for recognizing me today. Here's the plaque that I got. So I will pass that around so that you all may see. And this is for the Minnesota chapter of the American Council of Teachers of French. My nominator is here, and that is Jody Burnett's in the back there. She's a coach, an instructional coach for special ed. And you might wonder, special ed, French, how does that work? Well, her office is right next door to my classroom. And we're there virtually every night. I'm there till 5 because I have a dog to get home to that needs to go out. She's still there. But I go in after school and on and off during the day. Jody, guess what happened? Jody, guess what happened? And we're always talking. We're always talking. So she's the one that undertook the nomination and got things in order. So I'd like to thank her as well. Yay, Jody. And I'd also like to just take a moment. This is for the French language. And while we're a small program right now, just in case people are not aware of things happening in the world, which I know you are, but Forbes in 2014, Business Forbes, in their journal in March of 2014, published data on what the language of the future looks like. And in 2050, they're saying that French may actually supersede Mandarin Chinese in number of speakers, because it's not just France now. It's the continent of Africa that's up and coming. So even before 2050, it's going to be a powerhouse language. And of course, we are a globally minded community. We're an internationally minded community. And so I'd like to say thank you for your support, your continued support of French. And I tell my students, where are you going to be in 2050? A lot of them are saying 40, in their 40s. But as we keep going closer, it's going to be their 30s, their 20s, but that's 2050. It's already in motion right now. We may not see it immediately, but it's up and coming. And those of us who have gray under there, we know back in the 80s it was Japanese and now it's Chinese, but everything takes its turn. But Forbes is saying, watch out, it's on the rise. Okay, so I'd like to thank you, and this is my 35th year of teaching, and it's like it's come full circle, so I am just happy, happy, happy. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to call Kathy Baumann, John Marshall, German teacher, recognize a student.
Guten Abend. Hello, I'm Kathy Baumann, and I teach German at John Marshall High School, and it is my honor to recognize my student, Tyler Sandmeyer. Tyler took the National German exam, and for German 3, he received a 95 percentile on the two-part test, which is very difficult. When you receive a 90% or better, you are invited to an oral interview. So we were able to do that from John Marshall, Skype, on a Saturday instead of traveling to the U of M, and he was selected from a group of over 20 students as the top nominee for Category 1, which is being a sophomore or junior, and he was selected as the Minnesota selectee, and his name was sent to the American Association of Teachers of German, the main office in New York City. From that group, with his application and his interview and the recommendation from the selection committee in Minnesota, he was chosen as one of 40 students in the nation to receive a free trip to Germany. Tyler, would you come join us? This summer, Tyler will travel for 3 weeks to Germany. The group will meet in New York City and leave from there. He will stay with a host family for 2 weeks and attend a German gymnasium high school. And then there will be a week of travel to Berlin and other historic sites for him to practice his German. But Tyler is just a pleasure in class. He does above and beyond. He sends me an email. Hey, I found this great song. Have you seen this website, Mrs. Baumann? I think we know most of the words. And so he adds to my repertoire, and he brings joy and enthusiasm to the classroom. And he is so deserving of this trip. And so I just want to congratulate Tyler Sandmeyer for his above and beyond work in school, his kindness to all his classmates. Sometimes the students say, Mrs. Baumann, how do you say that? And I said, oh, look that up. Hey, Tyler, how do you say that? Yeah. And he is a wonderful colleague for his peers in the classroom and just in the halls at John Marshall. So thank you for recognizing such an awesome young man. And hopefully we'll hear a little more after his trip.
Tyler Sergut. That's the only word I know, sorry. If Carrie, if you could join me up front. Tonight I'd like to recognize Carrie, who's the assistant principal at Mayo High School. She has been selected as the Southeast Minnesota School Counselors Association Administrator of the Year. Carrie was recognized at the SEMSCA Awards Banquet that was held on the evening of Thursday, April 12th at Willow Creek Country Club. Carrie currently serves as assistant principal at Mayo High School. Prior to moving to Mayo, she served as an assistant principal on special assignment for the district, where she was very instrumental in the implementation of the CLASS tool, which is a teacher evaluation, and also was very instrumental in our instructional coaching training. She also served as an English teacher for 12 years at Willow Creek Middle School. So please join me in recognizing Carrie for receiving this well-deserved award.
Good evening, board and cabinet. This is not my favorite thing to do, to stand in front of people, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to be recognized tonight. This award was very surprising to me, but I do consider myself, even though I wasn't a student of the Rochester Public Schools, to be a product of the Rochester Public Schools. I'm finishing my 18th year here as a district employee. Dr. Marvin was actually one of my very first mentors in the district, and she could tell me the time and date every single time I asked her, so I just want everybody to know that. But I've been very lucky to work amongst really incredible people, colleagues at all levels, as a teacher and now as an administrator, and so my work that I'm able to do is because I'm able to lean in and work side by side with my counseling colleagues at Mayo High School and my administrative colleagues, not only at Mayo with Tom and Troy and Travis, but with my colleagues throughout the district. So thank you so much for recognizing my work and their work this evening.
Tonight, I'd also like to congratulate Lynn Nelson, if she can join me. Lynn currently serves as the physical education teacher at Longfellow Elementary. She was selected as the 2018 Public Health Champion. This award recognizes exceptional contributions to improving our collective health and making Olmsted County a healthier place to live, learn, work, and play. Mrs. Nelson's achievements and passion for children and their health and wellness through her leadership in the All-City Track Meet, Phillip Play 60, and all her famous jam and jumpers, and more. Mrs. Nelson received her award a while back, a couple of weeks ago, but timing didn't work out well, but now that we have a board meeting, we want to recognize her. And I will say, I'm well aware of a lot of things that you see, the jam and jumpers, but I know she does a lot of things individually for kids that we don't ask our teachers to do, but she does it on her own. I know a lot of the kids that participate in jam and jumpers, I shouldn't say this, but make sure they get to where they need to be sometimes, and wants to make sure that they all have great opportunities to participate. And I know the jumpers have been performing at many of our high school events and other events here in Rochester. So please join me in congratulating Ms. Nelson.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and I should not be standing here alone. There should be a ton of people around me, because I'm probably the crazy one that gets at the steering wheel of the car, but there's a lot of people around me that help me do the things I do. I've been so blessed to work with two principals that when I go into their office and say, I have an idea, they know it's going to happen. And that is Les Ernster, who's retired, and Chris Davidson, who's here. Jill Scheid nominated me for this award, but some of my Longfellow kiddos are here with their family, and they helped, and other families helped. Like I told the commissioners at the county meeting, I laughed when I got this award because I live in La Crosse County in Wisconsin. And I'm like, how do I get an award in Olmsted County? But I actually do spend more time in Olmsted County. So that's how I probably got it. I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with the county also with getting the first fleet of bikes at the elementary. We have snowshoes at Longfellow that we get out into the parks on our snowshoes, and then we also get out into the trails with our bikes. And then, as Mr. Munoz said, jam and jumpers. I have a jump rope club, the hip hop club. We've been out, try to entertain, let our families, our community see what great things kids can do with a jump rope or dancing. So thank you all for everything you do. You help us do great things, and just keep collaborating with every teacher that says, I have a great idea, because they're going to do something great. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Knowledge Bowl team. I'm just going back to grab a piece of paper. At this time, I'm going to call Mr. Jacob Giesen, the coach, and I think he's going to recognize students.
Firstly, thank you to the board for this moment of recognition. I'll quickly tell you what Knowledge Bowl is about. It's a team-based academic competition. Our teams face off against first Southern Minnesota teams, and then we qualified these four young gentlemen who you can come on up, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. They qualified for the state meet. Overall, there's around 1,000 Knowledge Bowl teams in the state of Minnesota, and we finished third at the state meet this year, and I would like them to each introduce themselves to you and be recognized.
My name is Marcus Yao. I'm obviously attending Mayo High School, and I am a junior.
My name is Johan Alexander, and I am a senior at Mayo High School.
My name is Spencer Moore, and I'm a senior at Mayo.
My name is Max Walter Smith. I'm a senior at Mayo as well.
And do we have any parents in the crowd to also be recognized if they would stand? All right, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much to the board.
Thank you. 3.02 National Volunteer Week. Mr. Munoz.
Yes, April 15th through the 21st is National Volunteer Week. It's a time for organizations across the country to honor volunteers for their selfless contribution and to recognize the impact of their time and energy all year round. One of the things that really impressed me 7 years ago when I came to Rochester Public Schools was the Volunteers in Education program that we have. As of April 16th this year, we had 6,463 active volunteers who have accumulated 23,229 hours of volunteering so far this year. Volunteers help in the classroom, reading and math help, mentoring students, etc. We will be holding a Volunteers in Education Appreciation Night on Monday, May 21st at 6 p.m. in the John Marshall Cafeteria to recognize and thank all our volunteers for their support this year.
Thank you. 3.03 School Board Committee Assignments Update. Are there any board members who would like to report on committee work they've been doing? Mr. Schleusner.
I'd just like to report on some of the presentations I went to at the National School Board Conference. It's kind of an opportunity for us school board members where, as hopefully most of you realize, we're just members of the community and we don't get the formal education in these roles. So when we get to go to events such as the state and national school board conferences, it's kind of our opportunity to learn. And they're generally great conferences as well. But some of the things I went to is, a couple of random ones. One of them is wondering how secure is the 535 website. There was a discussion on, hacking in the world, and it left a person wondering, how secure are our schools as well from an information security point of view. So my day job is IT, so of course I worry about security and information. Another interesting one is actually Deborah Seelinger and I went to one from St. Paul Public Schools on how they run their student school board. And they have policy on that, which I've been meaning to get from them. I haven't reached out to their school board yet. But it's been interesting because one of my school board assignments here in Rochester is our student school board, which we meet on Thursday, so there's really not anything to report on that right now. But it was interesting to hear from one of their students and how successful they feel their student school board is as a collaboration or almost an extension from their school board elected members. And it'll be interesting to see how they have it. They, in this case, being St. Paul Public Schools, have policy on it. There's this policy 510.05. And it'll be interesting to see how that compares to ours. Because I know there's been not necessarily a whole lot, but some dissatisfaction with how our student school board is. And they seem to have a lot of satisfaction with theirs.
Thank you. Other reports. Mr. Barlow.
I just wanted to comment regarding a particular session I attended at the
same event Director Schlusner is referencing, and that was an event addressing future-ready schools, which I found to be quite interesting in that it incorporates the premise that, number one, all students can achieve, and what it does to help develop that is to utilize technology, recognition and understanding of the individual student's learning style, and matching that up also with the curriculum type. And it's something that so intrigued me to where I will probably seek the superintendent's guidance as to how we as a district might look into this if we haven't already. I do know we utilize the one-to-one, and I don't know if that is a program that we're utilizing with them or something separate, but I did want to comment just in terms of the benefit that I think things like this present for a district such as ours. And then finally, unrelated to a committee assignment, but just community awareness. This coming Friday, April the 20th, happens to be the 19th anniversary, I believe, of the Columbine shooting, and I do know that there are a number of districts, students who are planning engagement awareness activities. I don't know, Superintendent, if there's any word or awareness on your part, if any, within our district are, but I think as a board it's something we should at least be aware of.
Yeah, I think we did meet with some of the leaders of the 3 high schools that have been organizing some of the, I guess, called them walkouts, and my understanding is that the 20th is more of an event that's off campus. So we informed that students that since they are leaving our campus, they would be considered unexcused unless their parents calls them in. I heard that the city library is organizing something and asking students and other individuals to participate there. I think when we talked to the students there, some of them were talking about going to St. Paul and joining other students in St. Paul at the state capitol. So that's all that we're aware of, but we did inform students and wanted to make sure they understood that since they are leaving our campus, it would be considered an excused absence, and then their parents would have to just call them in to excuse them, or it would be treated that way.
Ms. Workman.
This isn't a board committee assignment, but I had the pleasure of attending the parent group for the Spanish immersion program at Gage, and they are interested in pursuing some ideas for possibly extending that into middle school. I think my big takeaway from it was that this is a very enthusiastic group of parents. I thought Mr. Munoz did a really good job fielding the questions, but it's really evident to me that there needs to be some really consistent information presented to the parents concerning the process of how our district works in terms of hiring teachers, what's required for certification at the middle school level, and so on. But I felt overall it went really well, and I was very happy to be there.
Thank you. And I have a few things to report on. One is that there were a few of us who attended the student-organized anti-violence demonstration that was held at the Peace Plaza a few weeks ago. And regardless of one's political perspective, I was unbelievably impressed with the maturity and the intelligence of high school kids who, with some help from adults, but largely on their own, conducted a respectful, meaningful gathering of people who want to ensure that our children, and everyone for that matter, is safer from violence. I think it was really a tribute to these kids and to their peers, the amount of maturity that they showed. I met with our Native American parents, and we're continuing to work together to ensure that we do the best we can for their children, for all children. You will probably see posters like this posted around town. May 19th at John Marshall, there's going to be a powwow sponsored by this group. I think that's going to be an exciting event. The school board conference that Mr. Schlusner was talking about was a wonderful opportunity, and I was especially interested that nationwide there are so many districts who are dealing with some of the same challenges as we are. Sessions I went to in particular spoke about the critical importance of providing quality preschool experiences for children, that when they come even into kindergarten underprepared, it's difficult for them to catch up. And there are also a number of sessions about students who are dealing with ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Our district is working in connection with Mayo Clinic to study this farther. But the idea there that when kids, as they are growing up, are exposed to violence or places where there's drug addiction, where there is homelessness, where there's poverty, where there's racism, it affects how they can learn. And helping these kids learn how to overcome that and how to be successful is and continues to be a big challenge for schools nationwide. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, just want to update the board. We have been going around doing listening sessions at the high schools, and basically we just are in a location and we stay there during the entire lunch time, and then students can come in during their lunch hour to have a conversation. And when we get all of the information collected, we'll summarize it and bring that to the board. But our first reaction, which is really not a surprise to me, because I know our kids, and they weren't saying I want better lunch or I want things for me. They were asking about things that concerned our community and our country. They were asking us about conserving energy and composting and mental health and things that they are concerned about and thinking about, which is just I tell them often that I think sometimes us adults think our kids are just self-centered and they just think about themselves, but that's not our kids in our district, because constantly when we're interacting with them, they're always thinking about helping others, what they can do for others, what they can do for our community. And it's just been really impressed with our conversations we're having with the students. And like I said, when we get those completed, we'll do a summary of what we heard and bring back the results to the board so you can kind of hear what our students are saying. And then along those lines, we're also just started, I guess we just finished today, the 3 high schools having conversation, as we're constantly looking for ways to make our schools even safer. And one of the things that we have really been thinking about is, do we need to secure our high schools like our elementaries and middle schools are? And we're looking at potentially putting some type of buzzer system in, and so we've kind of made that decision, but we've been meeting with the students, say, all right, how can this work? From a high school student's perspective, how can we make this work and still make sure that we make our buildings safer? So we completed those 3. The last one today, we'll look at all the notes that we took from those meetings and figure out how the best way to implement that. But we really believe we need to lock our high schools like we do our elementaries and middle schools, and require people and students. It's a little more challenging because high school, the juniors and seniors have open campus, so that's why we met with them. And how can this work and not be such a total pain for you to get in and out of your building, but we also want it to be safe. So that's why we went and talked with them, and we received some really good ideas from them, and we'll have to sit down and look at that as we implement that at the 3 high schools.
Thank you. Ms. Seelinger.
Just to follow up on that, I do want to call the audience and listeners' attention to our District Family Engagement Night, Tuesday, April 24th, 5:30 to 7:30, Century High School, North Cafeteria. should have gone out in Peach Jar, but a nice reminder to join us as we partner with the Rochester Police Department to engage in discussion regarding school safety. Dinner provided, childcare provided. Please see our website for more information. We would love to have a good turnout, and it will also be streamed and or recorded, I believe. I'm getting some nods over there. So that's a great opportunity for parents to learn more. Also would like to bring up the listing post the board will be having. School Board Community Engagement Committee is having a listing post Thursday evening, 6:30 to 8, for parents in the Northwest schools, Bishop, Elton Hills, Gage, Gibbs, Sunset, John Adams, John Marshall, and it will be at the John Adams Middle School Media Center. So please join us if you are in those areas of town.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Workman.
I could probably do a good 20 to 30 minute presentation, but I won't.
Okay.
But I won't, not at this time. I think one of the in terms of our board work, I think one of the best sessions I went to at the National School Board Conference was entitled The Purposeful Board, Bringing Board Governance to a Higher Level. And I will try and put some notes together that I think would help us when we have our retreat later in the summer as we work to formulate some of our initiatives for the next school year. But the subtitle to this is 4 words: board governance is challenging. And to that I would say yes.
That was short, too.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, 4.0, consent agenda. Are there any items on the agenda you would like removed for separate consideration?
Move approval.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. 5.01, thought exchange, graduate. Oh, sorry, Mr. Munoz, I know this is important.
Yes, we have quite a few retirements that are in the consent, so I'd like to recognize them now. First one is Karen Atkinson. She's the Family and Consumer Science teacher at John Marshall High School, and she has 24 years of service. Cynthia Basie, science teacher, John Adams Middle School, 25 years. Daryl Bicklem, social studies teacher, John Adams Middle School, 28 years. John Drews, social studies teacher, John Marshall High School, 23 years. Colleen Judd, elementary education teacher at Longfellow Elementary, 33 years. Bernard Magazine, hopefully that's correct, teacher of English learners at Franklin Elementary, 3 years. Kim Sue McNiven, art teacher at Lincoln, 27 years. Deborah Smith, teacher for the developmental disabled, 34 years. And then community education retirement, Julie Larson Keller, 31 years. Carrie Rude, early childhood family education teacher assistant at Northrop Community Education Center, 10 years. Brenda Kahn, special education paraprofessional at Riverside Elementary, 12 years. Jean Schreiber, transportation para at Edison Building, 26 years. And Kenneth Nichols, custodian 2 at John Adams Middle School, 14 years. We want to thank all of those individuals for their service.
Thank you. 5.01, thought exchange, graduate profile. This is a briefing item. Mr. Munoz.
Just at this time, I'm going to have Heather get set up. And just a reminder, we've been working the last few months on creating our graduate profile for our strategic plan. And we did a first thought exchange, created, if you recall, we did a study session and created the profile. We put it out there one more time to get feedback from our stakeholders. And tonight, Heather's going to share that information with us.
Good evening. I believe I'll be sharing the information with you. All right. So first I want to take you through the overview. We did the second thought exchange for the graduate profile between February 22nd and March 4th. And the thought exchange was open to parents, guardians, students, staff, and community members. Of the people that participated, We had 1,400 people participate. There were 609 thoughts contributed during that time frame, and 15,603 ratings were assigned. And that's a little bit lower than our last participation with Thoughtexchange, but that's because this is the second round, and so people were looking at the graduate profile. The purpose or the objective of this this Thoughtexchange was to figure out what the top themes and general sentiment were around the graduate profile. So we wanted to hear if there were any gaps or concerns about the graduate profile, and to really hear from our community in terms of what that profile looked like. And we also wanted to get a sense of top questions. So were there any questions that needed to be answered? So this Thoughtexchange showed us that the success ready, and I believe you have the graduate profile available in board docs. So there are a few different themes within that, and the success ready individual theme had a high agreement, and participants saw that the skill sets are crucial for graduation. They wanted to ensure life skills, budgeting, financial skills, job applications are all taught to students. The trades and vocational learning, that was a mid-sized theme, meaning that there were lesser comments centered around this particular theme. But the theme was similar to Success Ready. They want participants who aren't going to college to be prepared for their future. So that was the general sentiment there. Effective collaborator, also a mid-sized theme. Participants appreciated the inclusion of collaboration in the profile, so they liked the word collaboration. They liked how we were saying we were going to utilize collaboration. And then well-rounded learners was a large theme because the graduate profile focused on the whole child, and so we saw quite a few comments in respect to that. And then implementing was a large theme because participants want to know how it's going to translate into the classroom, because what they saw was the profile, and we asked about gaps. We didn't tell them exactly how we were going to implement it, but we did provide a brief overview of what our next steps would be. So the top questions, which is what I think you will find very interesting, how will the profile be utilized across the K-12 band? So we know that that's a general question that we'll address. The comment that is this going to remain simply a document as opposed to a work in action. The request for a companion document and how we'll nurture these characteristics for students was also a question/suggestion. And how teachers will be given methods for helping students in the graduate profile. Another question that was brought to our attention was measuring characteristics. How do you measure it? How do you measure success? And how are we going to quantify and measure against the graduate profile to determine if students are achieving success? So as we get these questions, I'm presenting them to you, but we plan to answer these questions through our work with the graduate profile, but it's good to know what our community is thinking as we're working through this. And then there were some suggestions for content. Add something about life learner, be added. We had that conversation in our study session using the term lifelong learner. And peace training, how do we teach social and emotional maturity skills, which harkens back to what Superintendent said just earlier in our listening sessions that our students are talking about this. So that's the nuts and bolts of that second Thoughtexchange, if you will. Do you have any questions regarding that Thoughtexchange?
Yeah, I would just add that after reading these results, it seems like we were right on as far as the profile we created, but there was now, okay, then what? They really want to know how we're going to implement this and how is this truly going to impact their children. So as we've talked about this in the past, our plan is once the profile is approved formally by the board, then we'll have to schedule a study session to establish a couple goals along those lines on the graduate profile, and then the cabinet will work with others to create an action plan on how we will accomplish those goals and measure those goals, and then bring that back to the board for formal approval. And then I think I might have shared with you during the study session that once that's done, what I would like to do, I've seen other districts create also a teacher profile. So what do teachers are going to have to do in the classroom in order for students to accomplish those graduate profiles? And then the next step from that is, what is a leader profile? So what do administrators have to do to help teachers do to be successful in their profile, which in turn helps students. So both of those will probably be work that we will do next year. We'll get a group of teachers and spend some time establishing a teacher profile, and then we'll also create, once that's done, we'll work with a group of administrators and create a leader profile as well.
Ms. Workman.
So I think you answered my question, that you don't anticipate that we will have to make any changes to the previous graduate profile that we developed at the study session, or that you presented to us?
Well, it depends. We're hoping that you'll either approve it tonight or approve it at our next meeting, so then we can schedule that study session and start working on the goals. We do, I don't know if it has to be a separate study session, but it could be part of the study session on the goals, is that we really want to revisit our core values.
Right.
And even though there are a couple of the core values of the strategic plan that kind of address equity, but we would really like to have an equity statement in there, maybe eliminate a couple of the core values that kind of address it, and really have a really specific equity statement in our core values as part of our strategic plan. But we may be able to do that at the same time as we're working on the goals.
I'd just like to make an observation. I think this is really interesting, what the community values, because at this point, I know maybe it's not going anywhere in the legislature, but there are some people in the legislature who would like to see us return to the old star rating system of a district, and you are awarded a star, and it's totally dependent on MCA scores. So this, what we're getting, the feedback from the community doesn't seem to really fit with that, and I'm really hoping that for people who think that it's important that we continue with this kind of work that we've been doing with the community, that they would let their legislators know what exactly they would like to see in terms of school evaluation.
Ms. Seelinger.
Thank you, Ms. Nesser. I did one of the workshops I attended at our convention was on graduate profiles and organizations that develop them. I'll send you some links because I know you like my links. But a couple of things that I thought that they were really interesting, Superintendent, when you talked about a teacher profile and administrative profile, they also talked about a rubric for students. So students could also do some self-evaluation about how their learning is fitting in with the items in the profile, which I thought was a really great, empowering our students to be active in their learning. And one district that spoke also talked about using the, even just the graphical images, that they have those on their report card that the students get. And so it's kind of, it's that branding piece of if this is what we're doing, we want to see that everywhere in all the work we're doing. So those are some things that I took away. But also I did have some questions about, as will get to be answered, about kind of the backfill. If this is what we want our teachers to do, how are we going to support them in doing that teaching? If there's some adjustments to be made. And going from the, as they talked about, the student A, which is, most of us we learned math, science, social studies, to student B, who's learning critical thinking, collaboration, communication. How can you actively assess those things? So a little bit more work, but I think it's totally worth it. Thank you.
Mr. Barlow.
I'm needing to redirect my initial question based on what Director Seelinger just said, and make it more of a question to you, Deborah. So I like what I heard you say. I didn't attend that particular session. So would you suggest that, and you're going to provide the links to, okay, and because I think that might be useful for each of us to have, review in advance of the study session so we can have a better grasp of beyond what we already have. And then finally, did you leave with the impression that these districts which are currently doing this, did you sense that they were benefiting from it?
Yes, absolutely. And matter of fact, one of the really interesting things someone talked about was the economic impact, which I don't think we kind of talk around sometimes with our CTEC program, and making our students, ready for the world and the workforce. But just as a community, the economic impact of having our students ready to go out and be earners and wage earners and taxpayers and good citizens. So I really liked that it was quite an encompassing discussion.
And I think this was a really good activity for the district to do, to talk with and listen to our parents about how they want their kids to be when they are graduating from high school. The message we're getting at both go-rounds here is that it's not just what the kids know, it's what they can do with what they know. And I think that is so healthy for us to be taking that cue, or to be reinforced with that cue, that we need to produce not just kids who are good test takers, but who are decent, hardworking, productive, problem-solving, imaginative young adults who can go out there and get jobs and continue their education. I think that's really healthy, and I think it's going to be interesting as we continue to explore this. We have all kinds of staff here, teaching staff, administrative staff, who will be leading the way on that. The number of opportunities we give our kids already to put what they know to work, and sometimes they don't know they're doing it. So I think if we can name some of the skills that we're providing with our kids, make them more aware of the fact this isn't just a social studies skill, this is a life skill, for instance. I think that's going to be really empowering for our staff and for our students and their parents. So thank you for your work on this. Anything else? Okay. 5.02 approval. Thank you. 5.02 approval of math materials. This is a briefing item. Mr. Munoz.
Yes, at this time I'm going to have Janie Gibson, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and then she has a whole crew to join her up front, so I'll let them or her introduce all of them.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's set up here. I promised you they were never this quiet when we were doing our work, so be a little intimidating. All right, as they're getting situated, super excited to be before you this evening, especially to celebrate and bring to you the recommendations of the work that these and many more of the incredible teacher leaders and leaders we have in our district have been working around math over the last 2 years. Yes, more than 2 years we've been coming together doing our work. And yes, it's exciting, but really the hard work is just beginning, but we didn't tell them that. So kind of what our time together looked like is we asked for volunteers back in the spring of the 2015-2016 school year. And at that time, we talked about needing to start phase 1. So when we started the school year 16-17, we came together and we started looking at data. We started looking at how are our students doing. We reviewed the materials. What are we currently using? We went into classrooms. We watched math instruction in classrooms spanning from early childhood through high school, through 12th grade. And we said, you know what? This is what we're really, really doing well. Here are some things that we're not doing as well. Simultaneously, we were doing some study on what does it mean to be good math teachers? What does great math instruction look like? So we looked at the best practices in mathematical instruction. We talked about mathematical mindset, which is Joe Bowler's work. We talked about a different way to look at math instruction. So all of that took place as part of our phase 1. Who gets to talk about phase 2? Amy?
And then the next thing that we did was we obviously had to do a needs assessment. What do we already have in our buildings as far as resources were concerned? Where were the greatest needs going to be for different grade levels, different classes at the different levels? And so we started with the needs assessment. We looked at resources that were being used by classroom teachers as well as other things that are being used by math intervention teachers, special ed teachers, GATE teachers, EL teachers, all of those people that help support math as well. And then as we began to realize that there was some needs for some new materials and new resources, we began to design a rubric that we wanted to use to review those materials that had some of the work that Janie was talking about, that we were incorporating some of those best practices and that learning that we had into that rubric to make sure we would see those things evidenced in that material. And then using that rubric, obviously, we began to pour through lots and lots of resources. We narrowed it down to about 2 or 3 vendors that we thought would meet the needs of our district and follow the things that we expected in that rubric. And then we began to solicit feedback from lots of different people to see how those materials would score on our rubric. CCIAC, the community, other teachers that were not on the committee, obviously we need to solicit feedback from them as well. And so we began to use that rubric to sort of start selecting our resources from those 2 or 3 choices that we had narrowed.
So then we met back as a committee and talked about our top preference that we felt like was the best thing that fit our rubric and all the things that we felt were important with input. And so we recommended our top preference of the resource for each required course. And then we talked about the priority of materials to be replaced by course. So we also talked about things that we felt were really important that we wanted up front to make sure that we covered those areas and those materials and how they would be replaced and such.
And then after all of that, we finally came down to our recommendations, which we're bringing forward to you tonight. So for implementation in the 2018-19 school year, we're recommending full implementation of a new resource at elementary. It's actually an updated version of Everyday Mathematics. We have a few buildings using it now, so the recommendation would be that all buildings use it next year. That would be all buildings except Washington and our Montessori program. And then at the intermediate algebra course, we're recommending a product from Holt Publishers. And for our geometry course, full implementation of a product from McGraw-Hill.
All right, then we want to try something new in middle school. So at grades 6 and 7, we're looking at Big Ideas, which is from Cengage Publishers. But we would like to try to pilot with teachers, one teacher at each of our middle schools that will try the materials, work with students, and then they'll be our trainer leads the next year. Many districts do this, and we think that it would be a really successful training model. So that's our hope, is that we can pilot it, try it with real students, and then move that learning to the rest of the district.
In the year 2019-20, we are recommending a full year implementation of linear algebra, which is the 8th grade or 7th grade accelerated, and this would be the Holtberger series. Full implementation of Algebra 2. Grade 6 then would go full implementation, as well as grade 7.
So then that brings us to the implementation plan. So we're here right now before you at the board on April 17th to hopefully get approval for moving forward with these new materials. And after we receive approval from you, then we'll go ahead and order those materials as quickly as possible, because ideally we like to get the manuals in the hands of the teachers before the end of the school year. It's not a requirement that they take those over the summer with them, but I know a lot of our teachers will want to be able to do that and get used to those materials. So we hope to have them in the hands of the teachers before they leave in June. And then we will be receiving professional development by each of those vendors during that back to school week for any teacher that teaches mathematics.
Part of the implementation plan and for professional development would be to introduce the resource in June as a half day presented by the trainers from the company. And it's intended to introduce the resource but not be a full training. That full training will take place in the back to school week and be more in depth for everyone.
We would like to continue that ongoing professional development during the school year of 2018-19 by using some professional development days, code 7s, hopefully, and use our instructional coaches to provide teaching and plowing through the materials, and do some after-school collaboration with our PLCs to get this up and running.
So this was just kind of a high-level introduction to where we're going with math instruction. There's a lot of energy around math. Part of it is, if you quickly look at this, this is just a few of the people that have been a part of this committee. Some of them were here every single meeting. Some of them kind of joined us at different points, but all of the elementary teachers, all of our secondary teachers, and then all of our administrators or district personnel that had a voice in this process. So yes, it was a long process, but I think it was a meaningful process. It allowed us to do a lot of learning. It also allowed us to really be sure that we were determining what our needs were. We weren't going out shopping for that brand new car with no idea if we wanted a van or a convertible. We knew what we needed. We knew what we wanted. We had a really good idea before they started to bring in all of the new packaging with their bells and whistles. We knew what we were looking for. So just I can't tell the team and express to you my gratitude for all of the hours and the countless discussions and conversation and the learning that we did, and just the number of people that had a voice in it was just greatly, greatly appreciated. And I think the result is going to be better for our students, and that's what we're here for. So if you have any questions, I've got the experts with me.
Ms. Workman.
Well, I'm really happy, Carol, that you mentioned Montessori was not included in this, because I saw that on the in the resolution, and I had this great argument presented, and so lucky you guys, you don't have to listen to it, and you guys don't either, so that should save a few minutes. But I would like the resolution to reflect that Montessori and Washington are the exceptions.
Yes,
and
thank you.
So
Yeah.
thank you for all of your hard work. I know it's been a really long process. I went to one of those meetings, and you don't want me teaching math. We'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
This appears to have been a really team effort. And I just want to say thank you for that, because sitting here makes this decision a lot easier to know that you guys look like you're ready to go. You're anxious to get going and get started and move on and create the good results that I know you'll do for our students. So thank you very much for your hard work. I'd move this to action, actually, but I'll wait until everybody has time to speak.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Seelinger?
Okay, the answer is always the convertible.
Okay.
Just saying.
I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
Thank you again. As folks have said, I did come to the open house not knowing what I was walking into, wearing my parent hat. It was completely overwhelming for me. I didn't follow the rules of the rubric because I didn't really fit in that, so I left some notes that I'm sure that Janie appreciated. Probably knew they were mine, but I really was looking at it from a parent perspective, because I wanted to make sure that parents are going to be able to support their kids when their kids come home with the consumables, the workbooks, whatever is online, and I feel very confident that that piece, from my perspective, is going to be met, and I know that, of course, that our teachers would want that as well. I think that opportunity to have folks come in was really great. I don't know that that's typically done. I think that was a great idea. It was very full in here the time I was here. A lot of really engaged teachers. I know there was some, at least one other mom and one community member I saw. So really appreciate the work that's gone into that. And that I felt like that was really an extra step that kind of really sealed the deal, I think, for you, as well as making, as Mr. Smith said, making our decision a lot easier.
Mr. Barlow.
As has already been said, a lot of rigorous work, and thank you. Two quick questions. A 2-year process, looking at data, so I'm curious as to how, especially with the elementary, everyday math 4, is that currently different than what's presently being provided? And then how you think this may positively impact the performance of our early elementary school learners. And then were you asking us as a part of this package to, as a board, approve the request for professional development? I thought that usually fell to the purview of the superintendent, and I would just say not so much to you, but to the board, that we should probably separate that out from the recommendation, because it's anyway. So regarding elementary and student performance.
I'd like to say something just about the difference between Everyday Math 3 that we're currently using and Everyday Math 4. After we completed our rubric, we sat down first to score our current curriculum and not having seen any of the other curriculums prior to that. And so we went through with an open mind with what we're using and scored it. And then we scored about 5 other curriculums. And it was interesting, once we got finished with my grade level, we were in grade level groups, and out of the 6 then that we scored, our current scored the lowest with our rubric. And so it just validated how different the new version of everyday math is, and how I think that it will be better for kids than what we're currently using now. It was just mind-blowing to see the difference from the least, it scored the least amount to maybe even the highest in our group. So it was a very big difference, and with each scoring we kept an open mind to give each company a fair chance.
I would say, just to add on to that, that all of the research that we've been seeing about best practice and instructional strategies around mathematics, you can really see how that's been very intentionally built into the new program, with a lot more problem solving, a lot more kids collaborating. A lot of the things you talked about in your graduate profile were exactly the kinds of instructional opportunities that we see built in very intentionally. And so we really see a much stronger product. There's a lot more technology that kids are going to have their hands on with it, if we have devices, of course, for them to use. And then the second piece of that is quality curriculum, and then the staff development to help teachers know how to use it well. So that would be my answer.
And I can share, so as you know, that Everyday Math is a tool that comes out of the University of Chicago, and McGraw Hill is the vendor that helps with the merchandising and the selling end of it. But they told us that probably about 70% of the content and the practices in Everyday Math 3 have been changed in the Everyday Math 4. I think with our experience, we probably feel like it's closer to 50 to 60%, but there's definitely some significant changes. As some of our team members have said, really the changes that you notice are the things that we know best practices tell us. They're things that we know research tells us that we need to be doing more of and doing better in the classrooms. And so the things that are still in place were the things that were working well for students before. And so I think it really is the best of both worlds for us as we move forward.
Ms. Workman.
I have a quick question. I hope you can answer it. How long has the district been using Everyday Math 3? Do you have any idea, roughly?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe 5 or 6 years. It was sort of updated recently when Common Core standards came out, and so it was tweaked at that time, but for the new edition, it's actually been rewritten from the ground up.
Okay, thank you.
Mark.
A couple of questions. It's great to see the focus be around the hands-on learning activities. You know, as Jenny knows, I'm very much about hands-on learning activities in the world of robotics and the application of math. So it's good to see that in here, but was there discussion around integrated curriculum with other subject materials? As the world is getting busier, you know, like my day job is I write medical imaging software, that's very math intensive. But I just don't do math all day, I do other things as well. And when we get into an academic environment, there's multiple course materials that could be taught at the same time. Was that part of these discussions as well?
Do one of you want to? I can speak to that a bit. We did look at some curriculum that was totally integrated. And what we kind of landed on at the high school and middle school level anyway was that we really liked the products that we saw that had the integrated projects but still had that course separate. So we see in every unit in the text that we looked at, there's an integrated project where students have to take critical thinking, STEM skills, and they have to put them together and apply them. So we like to see that focused. But that was what was probably the preference for the teachers, was seeing that in every single unit.
I will address that a little bit because I've been around here for about 100 years. And so I've done every kind of curriculum and was part of every pilot that came along. I was always ready to jump in. And I did in the middle school industrial tech, science, math. Well, it ended up I was teaching a different level math that the industrial tech and the science teacher wanted me to teach to make them better at what they were doing, but it wasn't my grade level. So I still had to do the extra. And so it was, and I find that at the high school too, I'm at the high school level now, that what I'm teaching, they may not be in a science class that applies that for 2 years. And so we're not really at the same time with the same information. So we've worked with our PLCs this year really hard to find those activities that apply what we're learning. And when we looked at this curriculum, we thought, oh, I won't have to search. You know, I spend a night a week and Tuesday mornings looking for application problems to apply to a chapter. So I can put a few of those hands-on kinds of things within our curriculum rather than across the curriculum.
And that's kind of interesting because I noticed I was going through college, my math, my science, and my computer science were all very much in sync as I was going through the 4 years. And you had mentioned technology as well. Is this limited to just iPad applications, or is there web-based information as well? So it's device independent and accessible, say, from a student's home computer?
It is cross-platform, and so there are, actually all of these are, and that was one of the things that was important to us, and that will be a large part. I know, going back to Director Barlow, the professional development, we just talked about it. It's not, there's not an additional approval, there's not any of that kind of thing. We just wanted to let you know, because we know that the tool is only one small piece. How we use the tool is really what gets us our bang for our buck. And so we do have, each of the vendors have intentionally planned to have somebody from their tech team with them when they're here in the district to provide the additional training of how to use the tech tools as well, because as we're finding is that is something that we get, it's really cool, and then we don't ever really get to point of utilizing it or explaining it to our students or making sure our parents know that, you know, are aware of it, and so that it is accessible wherever their students are at. So yes, and that was also something that we made sure we negotiated, that we have access to it, because that's something else. Our online textbooks will often run out before the life of our textbook, and so that's created some problems. So we negotiated that in to make sure that we have access to that for longer as well.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you for your effort. I know we often don't get credit for including teachers in the process. It would have been, I'm sure, much easier for you to lock yourself up in a conference room per day and make a decision and move forward. But the fact that you included so many people that were up on the screen and took 2 years to study this, and I know you did the same thing in reading. We spent 2 years doing that as well. So I just want to thank you for that, and it is a lot of time and a lot of work, but I think when you include all those individuals, the transition to the new materials goes much smoother because they had input in that decision. So thank you for that.
Mr. Smith had suggested
Move to action.
it's been moved to action and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, I have some discussion. This is a really important decision, and generally speaking, we like to give an opportunity for people to give input into a really important decision. However, after 2 years and dozens of voices, extensive research, I just can't believe that 2 more weeks for somebody else to come and give you another idea is going to change much. So I think moving it to action at this point is a great idea, especially because you are concerned about giving our teachers as much time as possible to get their hands on these materials. Ms. Workman, you had something?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that Montessori is included in the resolution.
So the resolution then,
right.
Well, first we will.
Well, after we move
okay.
it to action. Correct.
Yeah, but
which is what we're discussing.
So we're going to change the resolution slightly. And is that part of the moving it to action, or is that part of the? I don't do numbers, as you have discovered.
If we need to amend the resolution, that'd be part of the actual action.
Okay, it's been moved in, yes, Mr. Barlow.
In that we're considering moving it to action, this is not a curriculum that will go into use this year. We're looking at 18-19.
Sure.
And so in terms of professional development and support from the vendors, that would occur in the academic year 18-19 as well?
They will be here with us yet this spring to just give us the introduction of this is how the manual is laid out, this is what your students can expect to see, here's some things for you to be thinking about. As somebody mentioned, there are some educators that will feel a lot more comfortable if they have that TE or that teacher's edition in their hand and just kind of browse it over the summer and kind of think through what it might look like. There are others, and which is totally okay, there are others that will just leave it in their classroom and they need to start fresh when they come back in the fall. And that's great too. It's just so that the teacher has the option. We will give them the opportunity to learn a little bit about it, just get that lick of the ice cream before they go for summer break if they want to, but then when they come back in the fall, they're getting the whole bucket and then some.
So point of further clarification, the vendor will be here in the spring, you say. Will that be for, how do you envision that looking?
It will be anywhere between 2 hours and a half a day in probably the Friday, probably June 8th, right after the school year ends. It will be optional for any of math teachers, any teachers that will be utilizing the resource can come and spend some time with the vendor in that training.
So the teachers who may not be available to attend that spring session, will they have a later opportunity to do so with the vendors? Or?
The vendor won't come back again until back to school week, and then they will get either a full day or a half day, depending on which level they're at, to work directly with the vendor.
Ms. Becker.
I just really, first of all, thank you. You guys did an awesome job. And but secondly, Janie, can you guarantee that when the vendor comes on June 8th that we will not have any snow?
Wow, you're asking a lot.
Most years we could probably do that, but this year, I don't know.
All bets are off.
So much pressure.
I think that's a really important question. However, it's been moved and seconded to move this to action and discussed, including weather issues. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to move this to action passes. Now, the motion, and make sure I read this right.
So we need a motion to amend the resolution.
I was going to read it amended, and, okay, we need to amend
read it
the
first.
motion.
Read that motion first.
Okay, thank you. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the purchase of new mathematics resources for Rochester Public Schools elementary sites, with the exception of Washington Elementary, Holtberger Algebra 1 for Intermediate Algebra, McGraw-Hill Geometry District-Wide, Big Ideas Resources for grades 6 and 7, and for the estimated prices as follows. And I think I won't read those because that won't change. So now we need.
She wants to move. Make an amendment.
I'd like to make an
Ms. Workman.
amendment to say with the exception of Washington Elementary and Montessori at Franklin.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the resolution. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. Now, the resolution, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the purchase of new mathematics resources for Rochester Public Schools elementary sites, with the exception of Washington Elementary and Montessori at Franklin, Holtberger Algebra 1 for Intermediate Algebra, McGraw-Hill Geometry District-Wide, Big Ideas Resources for grades 6 and 7, for the estimated prices as follows. Everyday Math for $1,237,431.97. Holtberger Algebra, $180,000, $927.25. Again, the numbers. McGraw-Hill Geometry, $179,314.38. Big Ideas Grade 6, $50,525. Big Ideas Grade 7, $50,525. Dollars budgeted for such purchases during the fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19 will be utilized to secure resources. No additional dollars will be required to meet this need.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seven 7.01, resolution non-renewing probationary teachers. This is an action item and requires a roll call vote. Now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 535 as follows. 1, pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 122A.41, Subdivision 2A, the school board hereby declines to renew the annual teaching contract of the following probationary teachers effective at the end of this school year: Megan Petrone, Susan Sailors, Nicholas Lang, Julie Mertens, Drew Saiskowski, and Alyssa Larson. 2, as a result of this resolution, the district's employment relationship with the above-named teachers will terminate effective June 30th, 2018. 3, the school board has received and hereby approves the written notice of non-renewal for each of the affected teachers. The school board chair is directed to sign the written notices on behalf of the school board. The reason for non-renewal are classified as private personnel data under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, unless the non-renewal represents the final disposition of the disciplinary action. 4, the superintendent or a designee is directed to serve the affected teachers with a copy of this resolution and the approved written notice for that teacher before July 1st. If possible, the notices should be hand-delivered.
Move approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. There's no discussion. All in favor say.
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Barlow.
Aye.
Mrs. Becker.
Aye.
Chair Marvin.
Aye.
Mr. Schlusner.
Aye.
Ms. Seelinger.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Workman.
Aye.
Motion passes. 7.02, acceptance of bid of fall protection for Franklin Elementary School playground. This is a briefing item.
Yes, at this time, I'm going to call Mr. Scott Sheridan, Executive Director of Operations, to brief us on this item.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
You're going to be there for a while, so yeah.
I'm here to brief you on the bid for fall protection for Franklin Elementary School. Franklin Elementary administrators, along with Franklin Elementary PTA, they've collaborated on a design and purchase of new playground equipment. And the fall protection that would come with it is fundable through our long-term facility maintenance revenue through the health and safety portion of it, and also the cost of the removal of the old equipment. This particular playground right now is off the southwest corner of Franklin Elementary. It's about 10,000 square feet, and they are going to reduce it about half the size. And so that's what the bids went out on. On February 22nd, we sent out an invitation to bid for the fall protection on the new design, and they were due back on March 13th. Again, this bid does not include any of the playground equipment or the installation of it. And the major costs for all that would be funded by the Franklin PTA and some funds coming from business services, as we have an annual general fund revenue source for playgrounds district-wide. So on March 13th of 18, one bid was received. For the fall protection, it was from Northland Recreation in the amount of $107,766. $107,766.
It's contagious.
It's contagious, yes.
Just to clarify, because I had to read this thoroughly, fall protection does not mean that summer, spring, and winter are unprotected. It's that spongy stuff that goes under the play set.
That is correct.
Okay.
I read it that way, too. We actually need protection from winter right now.
I agree.
Ms. Seelinger.
I would move this to approval.
So action.
Action, sorry.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Move this to action. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Action item. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 5, oops, I'm already rejecting, that's the next one. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 approves the bid for fall protection for Franklin Elementary School playground in the amount of $107,766.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7.03, rejection of bids for Jefferson Elementary and Falwell Elementary repointing projects. Another briefing item.
Yes, Mr. Sheridan will brief us on this item as well.
Good evening.
Good evening. You beat me to it. Thank you. I'm here to ask you to reject the bids, the first round of bids for the Jefferson Elementary, Falwell Elementary repointing projects. On June 6, 2017, the school board approved our long-term facility maintenance revenue 10-year plan, and these projects were on that plan for the repointing work. The budgeted amount for Jefferson was about $110,000, and the amount for Falwell was about $74,000. And it's also called tuck pointing, so it's repointing or tuck pointing. But the work includes masonry repointing, stone sill work, replacement of some brick veneers at Falwell, and then some work on some control joints in the brick veneer. And this is necessary to maintain the integrity of the exterior of the building to prevent it from deteriorating any further. On November 16th to 17th of 2017, CRW Architects was hired for the design services for this. We put these two projects together in the hopes of getting better pricing, both in the design and in the construction piece of it. In early February of 2018, a bid ad was posted, and the bids were due on February 20th. It was a base bid along with 5 alternates that we put in there. We received bids from 5 contractors at that time, and at the same time, we also received some concerns over some of the clarity in the language between the bid ad and the specifications that were posted in the site plan by the architect regarding prevailing wage. And due to the concerns that were expressed, we decided that, to be fair to all the contractors, the best idea would be to reject all these bids and rebid it after we cleaned up the language. So we did do that eventually, and that comes in the next briefing. But prior to getting to that, we would need you to reject this particular bid that we received on February 20th of 2018.
Move to action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to move this to action. Any discussion? Ms. Workman.
I'm a little bit curious. I haven't seen this. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I haven't seen this kind of thing come before the board before, as to some non-clarity in terms of the prevailing wage versus non-prevailing wage. Do you have any idea how that happened without giving us a 45-minute dissertation? 20 seconds would be fine.
Well, the responsibility for the specifications posting is done by the architect.
The architect.
And
Okay.
it was just something that was missed.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
one of the things that we're talking about internally is maybe trying to establish some type of parameters on when a project, maybe it's this amount or higher, we do prevailing wage. If it's below that, we wouldn't post it as that, but we're just having preliminary conversations on trying to establish, for example, if we're doing a really small, a few years ago, and if you remember, my office was all glass on that one wall, and they made it just a regular wall. I mean, that's something we probably wouldn't have to do prevailing wage for, but so we're going to establish some type of parameters for that. So hopefully that will take care of this.
Okay, thank you.
And then perhaps the actual language that would be included in the bid package.
That's correct.
That the architect would be required to use.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, per statute, we're required to use prevailing wage for when we're spending any state funds that we receive, and we receive approximately $400,000 of that a year. As you know, our long-term facility maintenance revenue is much more than that. And we want to follow, of course, the state statutes. And so as the superintendent was describing, we need to set down some parameters. We'd like to base it on the complexity of the project, the timeline of the project, and the cost. Because on the really complex projects where you need a lot of resources that you can bring in an immediate sense, like in a short summer project, prevailing wage would probably help you with that, because then you would have the multiple, the pay would be there to draw on the unions and that kind of thing, who have a lot of resources to put into a short time frame project. So it is something that we would like some parameters set at.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Barlow.
And just one additional inquiry regarding prevailing, non-prevailing. It seems to me like it might behoove us to work or communicate with other local government entities to see what their strategies are, so that we might together maybe maximize even on the non-prevailing side, if we're kind of working together, talking the same thing.
Thank you.
Any other discussion about moving this to action?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now an action item. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independence School District 535 rejects all the bids and alternate bids received on February 20th, 2018 for the Jefferson and Falwell repointing projects.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. 7.04, acceptance of bids for Jefferson Elementary and Falwell Elementary repointing projects. Well, he moves fast.
Mr. Sheridan.
Good evening.
Good evening. Now I'm going to ask you to accept the bids for the Jefferson Elementary and Falwell Elementary repointing project. As I stated previously, you just rejected the prior bids, and we did send out a reposting of the bids on March 20th of 2018, or early March of 2018, and we received 4 bids back. The low base bid was from Restoration Services in the amount of $81,800, and we request the board to also accept alternate 2 in the amount of $11,459, alternate 3 in the amount of $23,860, and alternate 5 in the amount of $6,080. So the total of the base bids and alternates totals $123,199.
Move to action. Oh, sorry.
No, I have a question.
You don't have a question?
No, I do have a question. But I don't know if we have to read the resolution first.
No, this is a briefing item.
Oh, okay.
You can ask.
It came in a bit less than what the other, what your initial thought was, because it wasn't about 185 that the architect wanted, and it's 123,000. So what's the difference? Just, is there a reason for that? I mean,
Well, the architect, when the architect designs it, he gets up there along the building, and he's able to articulate all the different areas that need to work. We just ballparked it at the beginning with our 10-year plan. We wanted enough funds in there to try to cover what we felt would be for everything. It's always pleasing when it does come in under budget, of course, versus over budget, and in this particular case, it did.
okay.
Other questions, comments? Any interest in moving to action?
I didn't know where we were.
That's where we were.
Motion to move this to action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to move this to action. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is now an action item. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 accepts the base bid from Restoration Services along with alternates 2, 3, and 5 in the total amount of $123,199 $199 for the repointing work at Jefferson Elementary and Falwell Elementary.
Move approval.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7.05, approval of proposal for construction manager agency for the Bamber Valley Elementary Indoor Air Quality Project. This is a briefing item.
Okay. Mr. Sheridan will brief us on this, and I think Bill's going to also join us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to brief you on the proposal for construction manager agency for the Bamber Valley Elementary Indoor Air Quality Project. On June 6th of 2017, the school board approved our long-term facility maintenance revenue plan. At that time, we had the Bamber Valley Elementary School project listed at about a little over $18 million. We received an attachment 7, which was conducted by LHB Architects, and they estimated the cost at about $16.8, $16.9 million for this project. And due to the complexity of this project and the accelerated timeline, as you know, we adjusted the calendar to allow us a couple extra weeks, and this project will be completed in the summer of 19. So you approved the calendar change, which provided a couple more weeks. So we now have about a 13-week construction window, and what that amounts to is about, we'd be spending about $1.3 million a week, so that's a pretty significant sum of money. And so what we wanted to do was hire a construction manager or agent. Again, we had a lot of success with that with the Hoover edition and the Hoover IAQ. We've been very pleased with how that project has gone. It's on time, it's on budget now, and even with the weather that we've had, we're still on time. So we decided to bring this forward because of the complexity of the Bamber Valley project, the cost involved, the short timeline that's involved here, and we wanted to try this process again. And we want to hire the construction manager as agent first, prior to hiring the architecture, the design firm, and that's why we're bringing this forward to you tonight. We do have a posting out for the architecture design, and that's coming back next week, and our hope is through this process that we have the input from whoever we hire for the CMA. In this instance, we're going to request for Knutson, and then they would be able to sit on the panel with us as during the interviews for the design phase as well. The potential cost benefits for the district on a CMA, it comes from the competitive bid packages that the CMA prepares and manages for us. That's a saving from the general contractors who, if we would hire just a general contractor to run this project, there's about a 5% upcharge for the construction materials and that kind of thing that come up during the project. And so that offsets the cost for the CMA. It's about an equal wash. The other addition that we get out of this is we're allowed to use the district tax exempt status, and then on a budget $17 million, it's going to potentially save us a significant amount of money as well. So on March 18th, we sent the request for proposals for a construction manager agency. We sent them to 5 firms that we've identified in the past from the last time, and we received 2 proposals back on April 10th. On April 11th, we interviewed both of the agencies that put in. They were both outstanding presentations, both very well qualified to complete these projects, and pretty equal in the cost dollars and the attributes that they provided. Both had different takes on the project, but we wanted to go with Knutson Construction. Like I said, we're very happy with the Hoover project and how that has been going. We have a great working relationship with them. They're very familiar to us. Excuse me. They've done multiple projects in the past. All of them have been on time. And the paperwork has been phenomenal as far as the timeliness of it. The change orders that come in, and so we've been very pleased. And one of the bigger things that put them over the top, as well as the amount of hours that they're willing to attribute to this, including working 6-day weeks if they have to in order to get this project done. And that type of commitment to us, we felt just might have pushed them a little bit beyond the other company. No offense to the other company at all. Like I said, they were both very excellent proposals. And so we're recommending that you accept, as construction manager, as agent, the Knutson proposal. The funds and the funding that you see there are the costs that you see there. That 1.75% of the project estimate cost fee, that's based on the actual construction. We don't know what that cost is going to be yet. We had them do that estimate at the original budget of about $16.5 million, but the actual construction cost is, while we're not sure yet, could be $10, $11, $12 million, and their fee would be based on that. And so we, just to try for some clarity in our proposal, we wanted to put apples to apples and try to make it as easy for you to understand and for us to understand. So that 1.75% is a straight fee, and that's an equal fee. And then we have a pre-construction phase. That's where we're working with the design firm and that kind of thing. And that pre-construction fee from Knutson was $17,000. That 1.75 project estimate that I talked about before, I believe it's about $288,750. And then the construction supervision cost, which is based basically on the number of hours that they're going to contribute for their wide variety of staff that they're going to apply to this project. That totals about 3,036 hours, and the cost of that is $275,180. So while that's $578,996 is a lot of money, we probably won't be paying that much, but we do want to have that money allocated in case they run into some problems within the project. So that's why we're asking for that $578,996.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Smith.
The CMA, are they allowed to actually bid on the construction too? No. So they'll just manage, they aren't going to have any of the construction? Okay.
Yeah, we wrote that in the last one at Hoover as well, and this one, because we didn't want any conflict of interest. We just wanted them to work as our agent and not have any input. It was asked, but we declined again this time.
Mr. Schlusner.
Thinking of Hoover, you're not foreseeing a parking lot oversight again for this particular project, I hope.
A parking lot or...
That was a pretty substantial change order,
It
if I remember
was.
correct.
I can't say yes or no on that one yet until we get the design done. I'm just being very upfront with you. The Bamber Valley parking lot is in significant need of work, as you know, and it all depends how much we can afford.
Ms. Becker.
So in this, I know I've asked on the other one, so Knutson is going to be updating the 3D files for this as well? Did you talk about that?
That would be the architect.
The
That we
architect
hire.
will do that?
Yeah, they'll be required to do the job in Rivet.
Okay.
Mhm.
And they'll have updated files and we'll receive those
Yes.
updated files back? Okay.
Yep.
How important is it for you to get approval on this?
Well, we do have the architectural design proposal out there, and it's coming back next week, and we'd like to do interviews next week so we can bring that to you at the next board meeting, I believe, the first one in May, to keep kind of the project online. The sooner we get the design going, the better off we're going to be in the long run with the project.
So you would like this approved tonight?
If you're willing, yes.
I'd like to move this item to action.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to move this to action. Any discussion? Ms. Seelander.
You had me at the part where you said there was some money saving, so thank you for that.
Other discussion? All in favor of moving this to action, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 approves the construction manager agency proposal from Knutson Construction in the amount of $578,996 for the indoor air quality project at Bamber Valley Elementary.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 7.06, approval of...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll have Mr. John Carlson, Executive Director of Finance, brief us on this item.
And the item, which I didn't get to read, and I really like
Oh,
reading
sorry.
things, is approval of Minnesota Energy easement at Churchill Elementary School site.
Well, good evening. Thank you for letting me have a turn now for a little bit. I'm bringing forward an easement request from Minnesota Energy Resources Corporation. This is about the third or fourth one I think I've brought to you. This one happens to be at Churchill Elementary School, and hopefully it'll pop up on the screen here in a second. There we go. What they're requesting is a 45 by 15-foot easement on our property right by the tennis courts there. The property line at Churchill is basically right there, so that's just inside of the property line. On the right side of the screen there is a parking lot at Churchill, and that's city property. So they're requesting to put an easement there and then do a gas regulator project similar to what they did at Kellogg Middle School. So in return, if we agree that they can do that on our property, they will compensate us $5 per square foot. That's a one-time payment to the district for that. We've looked at it as staff and don't believe that that's going to cause any impact because it's so far off in the corner of the property. That's not going to affect kids or any programming or anything we do at Churchill. So I'd recommend approval.
Ms. Seeliger.
Did you talk with Churchill Hoover staff? You say it doesn't have any impact, but do they run laps around that tennis court?
Well, that is a good question. I do not know the answer to that question.
But you talked with staff that said that you don't
We
think it's
talk to,
impact.
as staff internally, as superintendent and cabinet.
So maybe they'll just have to run around the.
Maybe they have to just kind of
be
go a little bit
bit
longer.
farther?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine.
Yeah, to be honest with you, we didn't even realize that the tennis courts were ours.
We thought those were city property
Yeah.
already, so, but they're not. They're on school district property.
You doing a good job maintaining them?
Apparently.
It'll be pretty music there.
What a great gift.
Yeah.
You know?
Nice.
So but you can't, other than the lap thing, and I'm guessing, can you describe, John, what it is going to look like, the thing that's going to go there?
I don't know
I mean,
if
just generally.
Generally? Well, I don't think it's going to have a red square around it. I think that's just the graphic here, but I think it looks like a pipe coming out of the ground, and yeah, I don't really have
Okay.
a quick example for you that I could pull up.
It's not going to be real pretty, but.
Well.
Drive down Soldiers Field there, look along Soldiers Field, the golf course on the edge there, you'll see some of those things.
Okay.
there.
Okay.
I'd like to move this to action.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded to move this to action. Any discussion? All in favor of moving this to action, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's now an action item. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve an easement of approximately 675 square feet at Churchill Elementary School. And be it further resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby accept the offer from Minnesota Energy Resources Corporation for the approved easement in the amount of $3,375 for the purpose of supporting the natural gas regulator upgrade project.
Move approval.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7.07, approval of 2017-2018 budget adjustments as of March 31st, 2018. This is a briefing item.
Yes, Mr. Carlson will brief us on this item.
All right, it's my pleasure to bring to you the third quarter budget adjustments. We last did the first quarter budget revisions back in the first part of winter, or first winter, I guess. So now I'm going to update you on some of the changes, and overall, very minimal changes. This is one of the most straightforward budget revision processes I've brought forward in quite some time. So very few changes that need to actually be approved in the budget right now. So first off, in the general fund, the revenue, we need to approve a decrease by $1.4 million. We talked about this on February 20th when I gave some bad news about the state special education aid being $1.7 million less than what we thought. Offsetting that is $300,000 of new grants and dedicated funding. Then on the expenditure side, it's about $500,000 of adjustments we need to make. $300,000 of that is related directly to the new grants and revenues that we've received over the last few months, and then there's just some miscellaneous small items that total about $200,000. I like to bring updates to you to kind of show you the number of positions that are approved within the budget. So these three columns reflect where we were at 1 year ago. On the left column, the number of full-time equivalent positions, then where we were at in October, and then where we are at right now at the end of March. There's really no change in the administrative portion at the top of the screen. Teachers, we are up about 5 to 6 since we last talked. And then we're up about 10 para positions. And you might say, well, then how come you didn't adjust the budget up very much if you have that many more positions? And the answer is we budgeted for, within the original budget, 10 teachers, or the equivalent of 10 teachers as a contingency. So some of those have been used as para positions. Some of them have been used as actual full-time teachers. And we've used 8.8 of that at this point. So we still have 1.2 in the budget that's not being used. So again, we really didn't have to add much cost there because it's covered. Other positions that have added that have brought us up to the 2,577 have been funded with new revenues that weren't in the original budget. So those are fully covered. And then some of them are from revenue funds like food service and community ed that charge fees. And then those offset those costs. So we're in very good shape. We, in the past, we've had to come and say, you know what, we had to hire some people. They weren't in the budget, but we're amending the budget. This time I'm saying they were already in the budget. We just didn't have the positions allocated, and now they are. So kind of the general fund summary, there's 3 points I wanted to share with you. So if you look into the details, where we're projecting to end, if we spend every dollar that's been allocated in the budget, we'll have a fund balance of 6.2% on June 30th. Originally, on the last budget presentation, it was going to be 7.1%, and then really the difference of that 0.9 is because of the bad news we got on the special ed aid. And we talked about that at that time, so just reiterating that. We are at the end of negotiating with Rochester Education Association, and we just wanted to point out that within the budget for this year, we have $3.6 million set aside for anticipated pay and benefit raises for our teachers back to July 1st. And then I just wanted to point out again, the superintendent's been very cautious this year, like he normally is, but especially cautious this year in hiring and replacing staff that leave in the middle of the year. We've implemented a new electronic process in Skyward. It's going really well. We've worked out a lot of kinks this year. Even 2 districts have come on site and have wanted to walk through it with our accounting department and HR department because they've wanted to consider implementing the same types of controls in their Skyward system. Non-allocated funds is basically where we collect all kinds of revenues related to donations and fundraisers. So we just allocate that out. We collect it here. There's been $900,000 more of donations and fundraiser money that's come in, and we've allocated it to the sites to spend $1.6 million. So that's $700,000 left over from last year, $900,000 for this year, $1.6 million. We assume they'll spend it all. Typically, what happens is they don't, and then we just ask you to approve it into next year's budget next fall. In the food service fund, very minimal changes. We just dropped our revenue projection slightly with some snow days and just looking at trends, and we've taken off $100,000 of estimated revenue there. And then we've added $100,000 of expenditures because we want to do some equipment upgrades. They are going to still end with $3.2 million in their fund balance, which is very healthy for food service. Community ed, there's $200,000 more of revenue and $700,000 more of expenditures to account for. Within our school-age child care program, we do have levy authority for the workers that are coded towards working with students with disabilities. Unfortunately, it takes a couple years for that revenue to catch back up to us. So while we might be spending more on it this year and kind of have to pay the bill this year, it will probably come through in about the 2020 levy cycle where that will be adjusted.
We never get it back, really.
It's an ongoing cycle of adjusting. So eventually it'll come back in and replace those reserves. Debt fund, really there's not been very insignificant change. We just included a little bit more interest revenue. Construction fund, again, we included a little bit more of interest revenue. As you can tell, perhaps, interest rates have been rising, so that's been good news for the school district. Funds that we have at work at the bank or invested are earning a little bit better than what we thought they would. Work comp, we haven't really made any changes here. We'll probably move some of that $1.1 million that will end in reserves because we don't need $1.1 million anticipated in next year's budget, so we'll probably move some of that back to the general fund. In our dental fund, another $100,000 of anticipated revenue. That's from changing premiums on December 31st. Health fund, also changing premiums, resulted in about $700,000 more in revenue there. And we did not make any changes to our Paper Tiger fund. In our OPEB fund, kind of looks like a large number, $1.1 million of revenues and $1.1 million of expenditures. And I just noted there that this is more just a bookkeeping entry that our auditors want us to make to reflect money coming in for retirees and money being paid out in claims for retirees. It's money that we're already spending through the health fund and general fund, but they want us to account for it here and flow it through the OPEB fund. That is it. Like I said, it was a very straightforward budget revision cycle this time.
Questions, Ms. Workman?
It never ceases to amaze me how easy you make this look. And I know it's not easy. And I would really like to compliment you and your department and the cabinet and everybody else who contributes to this. And then my second comment is just an observation once again that the deficit that we are facing is not anything that the school district did or the board or the superintendent or anyone else, but is totally in control, totally controlled by the state. So once again, it's out of our control. So thank you for all your hard work.
I will pass on your comments to the team. Unfortunately, I spend a lot of time in meetings, so there's other people that do the real work that make it look so simple.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I think I'm learning as I interact with colleagues across the state and read about things and hear about things. I think not every district does this or gives you the updated 5-year projections, because I think that's something that for two reasons. I think when we do that, we're very transparent with our community and the groups that we negotiate with. This is what it is. We put it out there for everybody to see it. But I think it's good for the board to, one of your major responsibilities is to oversee the budget, and this allows you to keep track of how things are going as far as the budget. And I guess I'm starting to realize that this is not something that's done by every business office across the state of Minnesota. So I think we're fortunate to have a great team that does that, and we're willing to put it out there for everybody to see. This is where we're at, and we don't hide anything. The numbers are what they are, and yes, we did change our process on staffing, and I know it's at times it's a little bit of a hassle for some of the cabinet members. Even when if somebody leaves a job, we have a process where I have to authorize it before John's office or Carl's office will get the ball rolling. So we're really trying to stay on top of our staffing and making sure that if there's something's added or replaced, it's something that we need to do. And I think it's running much smoother now, but when we first started, it was some people were maybe a little frustrated that it took a little while to get things rolling, but I think the process is much smoother now.
Ms. Workman?
I do have one question. So when we have budgeted for the possibility of having to hire extra staff, predominantly teachers, when you say 10 at the beginning of the year, that's 10 FTE as if they were being paid for the entire year, correct?
Correct.
So at this point, when we're more than halfway through the school year, is that it may look like, well, we just added 6 more teachers, but only as much as they would be paid from the time they were hired to the end of the year.
Yes,
So,
very good point. Correct. Yes, you're right on.
okay.
Can't even refute that. That's perfect.
Well, I wasn't asking you to refute that, but just to make the point that, oh my gosh, we just hired 6 teachers. Well, we didn't really, if you're looking at the entire year as 1 FTE.
Mr. Smith?
The big unknown, I guess, and the reason you put it in is because we haven't completed negotiations yet. We don't know what the cost is going to be. So we budgeted 3.6, so if it's more than that, this could cause us to go under the 6% reserve.
That's correct. Although I don't think it's going to be more than that.
All the things subject to negotiation, I get that, but you put that in a reason to make sure that we understand that we budgeted so much in that too, as part of our projection, so.
Yep.
Good. Thank you. Nothing's going to change here.
No, this is, if you move it to approval, it kind of is what it is, and I would appreciate that to make sure our books reflect correctly when the auditors come in the summer here.
I'd like to move this to action. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. I've heard the term used before, vacancy factor. So when when you identify 10, is that also what would be called a vacancy factor, whether?
Yeah, so I think maybe what you're talking about is maybe a little bit of attrition is maybe the word I would use, there's some jobs that are kind of open, somebody leaves, it takes a couple weeks to fill them in, but we also then incur some substitute costs, so it's not completely free or not spending that money too.
Thank you.
Ms. Workman?
I'd like to move this to action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to move this to action. Any discussion? All in favor of moving this to action, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's now an action item. Whereas periodic budget adjustments increase the accuracy of the adopted budget for use as a tracking tool, a financial management tool, and a financial projection tool, and whereas periodic periodic budget adjustments assist school sites and departments to monitor actual expenditures against the budget. Be it resolved. I was reading the whereases. You're right. That's what you were saying. I did it wrong. Okay. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 approve the 2017-2018 budget adjustments through March 31st, 2018 as presented.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 7.08, approval of revisions to the policies and procedures manual. This is a briefing item, and members of our policy committee will present changes to 3 policies that they've worked on.
Okay, so the first one, 603, curriculum development. This one, there's not a whole lot of changes except to reflect some MSBA changes. But also as we're going through our policies and when we come upon No Child Left Behind, we've decided just to go to a generic version of federal law since it seems to be changing many times. So we're just leaving it pretty generic. So that one, so there's not many changes other than MSBA changes on that one. 6.12.01. Carla briefed us on this one, and basically the overall changes in this are to more reflect what we're actually doing. The policy pertains to Title I schools and parent and family engagement. One of the other items that we're intentionally changing is the word parental involvement to parent and family engagement. So we're using engagement instead of involvement. There's some other legal changes that were needed that are reflected. Julie Ruzak in the district is the one who pretty much administers these plans. And then the final policy that we looked at was 616, school district accountability. And what this one, the changes in this one, there's not a whole lot. Again, there was the No Child Left Behind, so we're changing it to the generic federal law. We added a definition to world's best workforce. There's also the parameters for the CCIAC. They're not any different. That's just part of what this policy is. But one of the biggest changes in the policy is in the reporting section. We took out most of what we had in the policy, and we changed it to reflect what the school district needs to do now, which is just publish either online or in the newspaper the summary of the world's best workforce information.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Ms. Seelinger.
So I have a question about some of the content in a policy, policy 61201. And is that something that you would like to field questions at from the board table, or is that something you would like me to do offline with the policy committee, knowing that some of these came from administration and cabinet? Do you have a preference, policy committee?
Well, it depends what the question is.
You address it here.
Which policy are you talking about?
61201. So I have a question about under the purpose, in that first paragraph, the involvement of parents, guardians by the school district will be directed toward both public and private school children whose parents, guardians are school district residents. Was not sure why private school children, what's the why we have a reference to private school children.
Yeah, I'll have Carla come up and answer that for you.
Good. Thank you, Carla.
Is relegated to be used with our non-public students. So we have some of our activities that we invite the private school families to attend as well. So there is a small component that we're required to provide to our non-public schools.
Okay, so they are part of the, got it. That helps a lot, thank you. My other question / concern of the policy, and not knowing if our policies in particular, so that's more for our board, when they come from MSBA, I don't always know if we're picking up the language or if we're having more language or less language. And this one I had a particular concern about because it has to do with families and Title I families. I want to make sure that families who are in those schools who would be meeting the requirements of the policy would be quite honestly able to understand the policy and then be able to hold the schools accountable, the district accountable, and ultimately the board accountable. So that was my question about if this came directly from MSBA, because I think it's kind of a very wordy, very heavy, almost convoluted text. So just wondering if there's any discussion on maybe making it simpler or if we're just kind of doing a cut and paste.
So what we did with this policy, most of it is from MSBA, but Julie Ruzick did review it. So I think she tried to modify it a little bit, Deborah, but to the most extent, it really does come from policy, MSBA policy language. I will say that Julie is really good about explaining to families and parents if they have questions. I don't know how many of our families actually look to the policy, but the district plan, site plans are on the website, which is really the meat of this policy, is to make sure that they're aware of the district plan and their school site plan and what's included in that.
I share that concern about the language in the policy, when purpose here is to ensure that there is parental involvement in both the building level and the district level plans. And I had to read this about 6 times. I'm not sure that I still understand exactly what it says. I think it's really important that our policies be very clear to everybody in the district, because they do drive what we do. So I'm a little bit torn here, because to me this one is difficult to follow. However, if you're saying that Ms. Ruzak ensures that parents get a more straightforward version of it, maybe that's more important than rewriting this one. Go ahead.
And so just looking at this policy, I try to kind of look at other policies from other districts to kind of compare. And the one I looked at today was Minneapolis, which is much shorter, and it talks about the same statute, the 2020 USC 86318. And basically it's, it's saying develop a written plan with parental involvement, agree upon the written plan with parental involvement, distribute the developed plan. It was much more clear, like a one-pager. And so I'm fine going forward. I'm not disputing that this has been vetted by administration and cabinet by any means. But just wondering if there are times and places when maybe as board members or as administration, we can work together to kind of streamline the language to make it just is really clear for all of us to know exactly what the policy is referencing.
Mr. Barlow.
So what I would suggest is, if we are struggling as board members to fully understand, then we can only imagine how our parents may struggle. There's no rush, I don't believe, or that I'm aware of, that requires us to this evening take action on this.
We can't.
No, we can't.
Anyway.
My
It's gotta
policy
be out there.
we have to let 30 days.
And I will say, there's no issue if you want us to relook at this and make it more parent-friendly in terms of the language. That's absolutely fine. We're very open to doing that.
Ms. Becker.
My thought then is, on the policy committee, when I was vice chair, policy, in charge of policies, I guess it was my understanding that we're going towards MSBA language. So if, as a board, we all want to say, you know what, it's too complicated, we don't know what it is, then I think that's a different discussion. So I don't know if we're going with MSBA language. I would say go with MSBA language unless there's something really specific why we want to do something different. Otherwise, go away from it or whatever. But I don't know that we should be half and half.
Ms. Workman and then Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I'm a little reluctant to just say we're going to go with MSBA language, because I guess I've been doing these policies for quite a long time, and MSBA policy isn't always lined up to the specifics of our district, which is something that you alluded to. But I think more importantly, I'd like another look at this policy to see how much of it is really policy and how much of it is procedure, because we've talked about divorcing those two things in our policy to say this is the policy, here it is, and over here is the procedure as to how the policy will be carried out. So I think there's some language in here that maybe could be considered procedural, and if we took that language out to and set it aside in a different place, that I think it would make it more comprehensible to board members and others to read and understand. I mean, these are our policies, and we have to stand by them. So I think if we're having some questions about clarity at the board level, that we really do need to take another look at it.
Mr. Smith?
I would just suggest that if board members like simpler language or different language, that they suggest that language to the policy committee, and we can put those, side by side, then bring them back to the board. If we're gonna write the language and not use MSBA language, then we probably should also have a legal review of the policy to make sure that we are in compliance with the statutory requirements that are cited as part of the policy. One reason for using the MSBA language is because we know that it meets that test. But having said that, if it's confusing, if we think it's confusing to parents, and we think there's a simpler way to state, like it's mean to me to say, it sounded like that was very sequential. That was pretty easy to understand. If that meets the test of the law, then maybe we should be open to the idea of simplifying this. So I would suggest that I could live with either way, but board members think they can make it language simpler, and when you use a Minneapolis example, that would make it simpler. Then I'm open to that. But I think those folks should communicate with the policy committee and suggest those changes, and maybe between the group they can kind of agree on that and then bring it back to us all for review again. Since you're open to that, that might be the best solution at this point.
Ms. Workman?
I think, I'm not suggesting that we adopt what Minneapolis has here by any means, but I think that the simpler that we can keep it, then that also allows the administration flexibility in how they're going to implement the policy. So I'm not sure how much of that really applies in here. It's a little bit difficult to read with all the strikeouts and the underline, and I understand we have to do it that way, but
we can't vote on these policies or adopting these policies tonight. Is it the consensus of the board that you would like the policy committee to go back to the drawing board sort of on a Title I policy, or to just bring it forth again for a vote at our next meeting?
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We can look at it.
So would you like Julie and I to take a look at this, or do you want to look at some other policies yourself and bring forward another?
You mean Julie Ruzek?
example? Julie Ruzek.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm up for it, but I think Julie Ruzek is a much better choice for
clarify. Julie Ruzek.
Thank you.
And I to look at it.
Does it make sense for board members who have specific language or approach they want to do it, to submit that to you guys to look at it, and then have the committee review it, get your take on it, and then have the committee sit down with you, review it, and then see where that leads us. It should lead us to some consensus, I would think. I would hope, anyway.
Because we have a meeting on Monday that we can, not that you have to have it all.
I was
done
going
by
to say Monday might be a
It's
little.
probably pretty tight turnaround for you, but, so we can have, yes.
So, yeah, 612.01 will not be in this for vote at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, Carla. Appreciate it.
7.09, closed session property, action item.
Pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, Subdivision 3, make a motion to move into closed session to discuss potential real estate transactions, and immediately following, pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05, Subdivision 2A3, move into closed session for the consideration of educational data and the administration's recommendation with respect to the proposed removal of enrollment of students who are not in compliance with the requirements of Minnesota Statutes Section 121A.15.
It's been moved and seconded to move into closed session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are moving to closed session at 8. Meeting is reconvened at 8:49 p.m. Resolution before the board. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. The school board hereby accepts and adopts the facts and conclusions outlined in the notice of proposed expulsion as the basis for its decision. The school board hereby expels the student from the schools of Independent School District 535, Rochester, from April 17th, 2018 through April 16th, 2019. The superintendent or a designee is directed to mail the following to the student and to the student's parent: a copy of this resolution and a later stating that the student has been expelled from April 17th, 2018 through April 16th, 2019, and may apply to resume attending school in the district the first school day after the period of expulsion ends. The superintendent of a designee is directed to identify the alternative educational services or special education and related services that are available to the student during the period of expulsion, if the student wishes to take advantage of them. The superintendent or designee is directed to make an electronic report of this expulsion to the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education within 30 calendar days as required under Minnesota Statute Section 121A.53. Be it further resolved that the student is not allowed on any Rochester Public Schools property except for the building to which the student is assigned, nor is the student allowed to participate in any extracurricular school activities during the period of this expulsion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And this meeting is adjourned at 8:50 p.m.